For Mother's Day, I made a donation in my very Catholic mother's name to Planned Parenthood. I grew up in a very Catholic home where my mother was in the choir and a teacher at the school. I am now a 36-year-old disabled veteran and a mother of 3 really good kids. After high school, I joined the Army and saw enough of the outside world to shape who I am and what I believe in. We are a very left and supportive household, so you can see the battle I have with my mother. This conflict has really ramped up recently, with her criticizing how I raise my kids and our lack of religion. She even makes comments when I attend a 50501 protest. For my last birthday, she gave me a card stating a donation was made in my name to the Free Store. My mother is not the charitable type, so it was clearly done in a spiteful way. Fast forward to Mother's Day, and after a while of not talking, she sent a baby picture of her holding me. The note said, "Thanks for making me a mom." I responded back that I had made a charitable donation in her name to my local women's health center, a Planned Parenthood. I told her it was a really good one, too. Hopefully, her donation makes it to someone who is not quite ready to celebrate Mother's Day. Up next, my coworkers filed a formal complaint with our supervisor because I refused to share my homemade brownies. So, I was working at a residential treatment program. I loved this job and helping the clients in any way I could. I had just celebrated a year at this job and saw some changes in the workplace. There was a girl that I worked with who was there for like 4 or 5 years. She made herself like the top dog. Whatever she did, others would join in. One night, as I was about to leave, another coworker came to me saying the girl from before was talking very negatively about me and making fun of me. I was pretty shocked hearing that. I thought we became friends a few months into me working there. In that moment, I decided to brush it off and see how she acted around me for a bit. She definitely seemed off. I got hurt one day and was in the nursing station getting wrapped up, and she walked in. When I told her I was hurt, she rolled her eyes, and the rest of my coworkers really avoided me after that. I then heard them talking about me more, and had other staff members coming to me telling me things they had said. But that wasn't the worst part. I was going through a stressful time with that injury. I had to wear a brace. I was told I had arthritis and my tendon was inflamed. I had to wear the brace for a few weeks, and it made work harder. I had a note, but they still pushed me to do things they didn't want to do because they knew I'd fold under the pressure. One night, I made brownies. It was a client's birthday, and I always tried to make the client's birthdays special, since they were in treatment celebrating. Everyone loved when I made brownies. I'd hand them out to clients, then bring the leftovers in for the staff working that night. This time I didn't. I brought some up for certain staff that asked beforehand, but none of the negative Nancys asked directly. They just assumed I would give them some. After that, I continued to give other staff brownies that were leftovers. They got so pissed, they went to our supervisor about it. He said I can either save extra brownies for all staff or make enough for just the clients. So I obviously made just enough for the clients after that. I'd give some to 2 to 4 of them just to do so, and the clients loved it. Clients also saw the things that were happening. They literally know everything in jobs like this, so I was very happy having most of them cheering me on. Up next, I watched a woman clean the train floor with her sari because her mother-in-law told her to, so I sent the mother-in-law's luggage on vacation. I was 12 or 13 at that time and was traveling with my dad from Vadodara to Bhubaneswar as part of my 3-day journey to Delhi, as I am Indian. And somewhere in between, a family of 4 boarded the train. They immediately gave me the ick. The family consisted of a young couple, their toddler, and an older woman who was apparently the girl's mother-in-law. Boy, she was a bitch. At every possible instance, she would swear at her daughter-in-law, who was struggling with their toddler and all their hefty luggage. And the husband did not give a flip about his wife. The haranguing continued on the train, too, where the mother-in-law forced the young woman to clean the water their kid had dropped on the floor with her own sorry. What pained me was nobody cared to respond to this poor woman's distress, as she looked around, teary-eyed, humiliated by all the profanities her mother-in-law hurled at her. Finally, when the train stopped at our destination, the self-important mother-in-law got down, clutching her blue travel bag, placed it on the platform, ever ready to abuse the daughter-in-law all over again. But then I saw the perfect opportunity for some revenge. My dad helped that young lady with a few of her bags, for which she looked ever grateful. But the mother-in-law now began to taunt my father for helping her allegedly useless daughter-in-law. Mind you, all this while the husband had not bothered so much as to look his wife's way. This is when I realized that the train was bound back to Vadodara from where we had boarded, within another 5 or 10 minutes. From their conversation, I had come to understand that the mother-in-law's blue bag had her phone and all her other belongings. In that bustling crowd, I noticed that there were no cameras to monitor any movement whatsoever. So I was nice enough to discreetly put the mother-in-law's precious blue bag back into the homebound train. I went home, happy to have seen the horrified mother-in-law and her son search for the bag, while the daughter-in-law stood there, satisfied in her family's newfound distress. That was the most I could do for the poor young lady. For those who might say it's somewhat criminal, no, it's not. The bag could have just as well been forgotten on the train, and the railway staff will house the belongings and return it to the owner if contacted. I mean, that bag needed a vacation, so I gave it one. Up next, my supervisor is getting a text from me every 15 minutes about trailers that I know don't exist. I work in the logistics industry, and as part of my position, I accepted that I would work pretty much all of Saturday and be the on-call person, since the trade-off is I also don't work most of the normal work week. This company infamously has a ridiculously high turnover rate and is filled with constant drama of upper management trying to get one over on each other, screw each other, and trying to sink the company. This attitude runs downstream. It's the most hostile workplace I've ever been in. But you can basically do whatever you want as long as the work gets done. And they also let you work from home a lot. In this economy, that goes a long way. I took this job because I'm a former stay-at-home, now divorced dad who has primary custody of my child, who just turned 5, and I have limited options. When his mom has him, I go into the office. When I have him, I have to work from home. That will change, and I told them this when they hired me, as they desperately needed employees, that they need to bear with me for the first year while I sell my house and move closer because of the divorce I was going through. It was only finalized after I started working there. But that wasn't the worst part. The job, however, is a lunatic asylum. The supervisor I was written up by for goofing off at work has openly drunk beer in the office after his shift technically ended. That's the kind of environment we're dealing with here. I am by no means a model employee. If you told me I were, then I assume I did something wrong. But I do actually care when I have to work and when something needs to be done. I spent all of this last Saturday making sure everything was taken care of during my 12-hour weekend shift while I had custody of my child, who wants nothing more than to play with me. I closed my computer for an hour to go play uninterrupted with my son after doing all of our updates, because that's supposed to be part of the flexibility of my position. that you can take care of what you need to take care of if you get the work done. I get a message from my drink beer in the office supervisor asking if I'm even working because he noticed my teams appeared offline during that time period. Never mind that he has actual oversight over the work I do and can see for himself what I've been doing today, as all of it is trackable. He decides to get on me, asking if trailers from a specific account are moving. What he says is nonsensical. The specific account he references isn't serviced by the company he referenced. So, knowing this, I've been texting him every 15 minutes for details on these trailers he's concerned about. Because now, I'm concerned about these non-existent trailers, and I want to make sure the next shift isn't caught flat-footed on these trailers I wasn't aware of. I want to make sure our customers aren't being deprived of their product and experience shutdowns, which costs their company thousands of dollars. My supervisor knows about trailers I missed, trailers I'm not aware of, and I need to know what they are. And he won't tell me. I was risking my career over phantom trailers in a hostile environment. I'm texting him every 15 minutes asking for help. All of the work has been taken care of, but I'm extremely worried about these trailers he mentioned I don't know about, but he knows what they are. So I have to keep texting him, pleading for more information and to make me a better employee, as these trailers ended up in my blind side. I'm extremely worried my team is going to get blamed for something I missed, so I'm pleading with him to tell me the trailer numbers he knows, and I'll take care of it. I'm already staying up way beyond when my shift ended to make sure this gets covered. And he won't respond to my text messages anymore. Despite this being an extremely important issue he went out of his way to make sure I was aware of. I really hope he responds. I'm sure I'm annoying him by now, but this is pretty important. I'm going to wait 5 more minutes and then send him another text message. I'm sure he's busy, but he cares about this company enough to make sure his weekend employees are tracking trailers only he knows about. So he'll respond if I send him enough text messages. Up next. My new director demanded a physical signature for every single order, so on Monday morning, I brought him a stack of 64 separate forms. Now, because parts are expensive and often custom ordered, our old system was simple. I'd email my manager, "Hey, we need a $4,000 hydraulic seal." He'd reply, "Approved," and I'd order it. Quick, efficient, and everyone was happy. Enters Kevin. Kevin is a new efficiency consultant turned director of operations. Kevin thinks email is for lazy people and decided that to curb unauthorized spending, every single requisition, regardless of cost, now requires a physical ink-on-paper signature on a specific form 402, hand-delivered to his office. I told Kevin this was a bad idea because we are a high-volume shop. On a busy Monday, I might order 40 different items, ranging from $5 bolts to $10,000 engines. Kevin's response: "If it's not signed by me in person, the company isn't paying for it. No exceptions. I don't care if it's a nickel or a grand. I want to see every request that crosses your desk." I realized Kevin didn't quite grasp what every request meant. I usually batch my orders or handle the small stuff, washers, lubricants, safety goggles, through a general shop fund, but not anymore. But Kevin was about to regret making that demand. Monday morning comes. Instead of batching my needs into one list, I treated every single individual component as a separate requisition. Need 10 specific bolts? That's one form. Need a bottle of degreaser? That's a form. Need a replacement light bulb for the break room? Form. By 10 a.m., I had a stack of 64 individual forms. I walked into Kevin's office. He was on a conference call. I waited, and when he hung up, I laid the stack down. "Kevin, what is this?" Me. The requisitions for the morning. You said you wanted to see every request. I need these signed so I can get the shop running. It took him 20 minutes to sign them all because he insisted on reading each one. By the time he finished, I was back with 15 more. By Tuesday, he was visibly annoyed, and by Wednesday, the fallout began. Because I was spending half my day walking back and forth to his office and waiting for him to finish meetings to get signatures, the actual repair work slowed to a crawl. 3 major clients called to ask why their machines weren't ready. The breaking point was the emergency overnight. A local plant had a massive failure, and we needed a $12 O-ring to fix a $200,000 pump. It was around 4:45 p.m. Kevin had already headed out for a networking dinner. Now, under the old rules, I'd just buy it and get reimbursed. But under Kevin's no exceptions rule, I couldn't. I told the client, "I'm sorry, I don't have authorization to purchase the part until it's physically signed off by the director." The client was furious. They called the CEO. The CEO called Kevin at his dinner. Kevin told the CEO he'd handle it in the morning. The CEO told Kevin to get his behind back to the office now. Kevin had to drive 45 minutes back to the office, in his suit, just to sign a single piece of paper for a $12 part. The next morning, a company-wide memo went out. Digital approvals via email are reinstated for all items under $5,000. Kevin doesn't look at me anymore when I walk past his office. I still make sure to bring him a physical form for anything over $5,001, and I always make sure to wait until he's right in the middle of a very important lunch. After all, he wanted to see every request. Up next. Oprosti, ne radimovdje. I had to learn this phrase because every shopper in a Montenegrin store assumed I worked there. I'm half Korean, so I lean towards brown. I have noticed that I blend in anywhere there are brown people. I have had strangers speak to me in Spanish. I have had a tour guide tell me I look Egyptian. So, I'm in a home goods type store in Montenegro. I had to go to this store multiple times because I was furnishing a place. And every time, without fail, at least one person would ask me where to find something. I don't speak the language, so I was oblivious at first. Several people must have thought I was deaf or rude. Once I realized it, I learned to say, "Sorry, I don't work here." Oprosti, ne radimovdje. Up next. String. Now I am going to work much slower, so the company makes significantly less money. Last year, I started a new job where I was hired to replace the owner's daughter. I have always focused on improving efficiency and finding ways to do the same task with even one less move. During the interview, I mentioned that I reduced times by 60% at my previous job. They offered me flexible working hours, and the agreement was that as long as I covered production, I could establish my own routine. This was the main selling point because the salary was noticeably lower than my previous job. I knew I could find a way to have a lot of spare time to find a better work-life balance. In the beginning, my predecessor showed me their methods, which they had been using since the company started. She was producing around 30 kilograms of product per week for 4 stores. The company was expanding to a new location, so they hired a temporary assistant to help me. They told me I had full control over the workplace and could decide when I no longer needed the help. But that wasn't the worst part. As the weeks went by, I improved the process until I was covering all the production by myself. Even when they opened a 6th location, I managed to cover the full demand. I was producing 70 kilograms per week, more than doubling the previous production. I told the bosses the assistant was no longer necessary until the holiday season. I kept improving until I was producing 80 kilograms per week. One of the easiest ways to improve was by skipping my 30-minute lunch break. Normally, stopping and restarting the process takes about 45 minutes of effective time. By pushing that break to the end of my shift, I gained 45 minutes of effective time in exchange for leaving 30 minutes earlier. When my vacation approached, my bosses refused to call the assistant back. They asked me to basically overwork myself to do my vacation days in advance, which resulted in unpaid overtime. When I returned from vacation, I found out they never called the assistant and they had run out of stock. During the holiday season, the demand hit 110 kilograms per week. I produced 80 kilograms per week and covered the rest with stock until we ran out. I had to work unpaid overtime again, and when I complained, they just told me to rush. I decided to cap my production at 90 kilograms per week. This was already 3 times as much as they thought was feasible for a single employee. During the slow months, demand dropped to 60 or 70 kilograms per week. Since we could not hold that much stock, I finished my work and started leaving a bit earlier. One day, the boss visited an hour before my shift ended and saw me turning everything off. A week later, he told me he had been watching the security camera recordings from the past months. He had no idea how much money he was about to lose. He saw me leaving early and demanded that I work the full 8 hours without exception. I told him I tripled productivity and was considering asking for a raise, but he did not want to hear it. I do not tolerate a workplace that refuses to pay overtime, but complains when I leave early after exceeding production. So I have decided on a new plan. I will never do overtime again, not even for a single minute. I have reversed many of my process improvements, so the cameras show me working non-stop, but at a much slower pace. During the next peak season, I could have produced 120 kilograms, but now it will be 70 or 80 at most. He will not be able to say anything, because the cameras show me working. I am going to take my full lunch break exactly when I am supposed to, even though it wastes 45 minutes of company time. I am done doing any favors. I will no longer answer the phone after hours or try to maximize revenue. I even started buying from the expensive distributors again, instead of the cheaper alternatives I found, because they do not even realize the difference. Up next, I had to charge people £20 for my free furniture just to get them to take it. Some of the freebies included an old fish tank with a stand and an L-shaped desk. I listed both for free, included the dimensions in the description, and provided the first half of my postcode. The title and description both clearly said, "Collection only, no delivery," because I can't drive. I even specified to bring a friend to help dismantle or load furniture. Oh my God. I was getting 20 to 30 messages a day, and 90% of them were questions that could be answered if people just read the description. People would ask, "Can you deliver?" No. They would say, "I need help loading it." I told them to bring a friend. "I need this for whatever reason." "Okay, come get it." "Will this fit in my car?" "I don't know." "Where are you located?" It literally says in the title and description. I finally had to delete the listings and relist them for £20 per item, simply to get rid of the ChoosingBeggars. One item is still at my old apartment. I tried donating it to a few charities, but they said I had to bring the item to them. I told them I can't drive, and they didn't respond. For fuck's sake, I guess they are getting scrapped. Reddit had a lot to say about this. A top comment from user HeadRazmataz7174, which received 794 upvotes, shared their experience. They had an old table they were trying to get rid of and put it in front of their house with a sign that said, "Free table." It sat there for several days. One of their neighbors suggested putting a price on it to see how fast it would disappear. They changed the sign to read, "Table for sale, $10. The owner walked inside to get a drink and a snack, and by the time they came back out, it was already gone. It does not make any logical sense, but it works. The reasoning is that if you put it for free, people think there is something wrong with it. If you put a small price on it, they figure it must be valuable, so they grab it when you are not looking. Another reader, user Crackinmypants, added that they do the same thing. They list items for a really good price with no holds. When the buyer comes to pick it up, they just give it to them for free. It usually makes their day, and it cuts out a lot of the choosing beggar bullshit. Finally, User Quack Atomic shared a story from the early 2000s when tube televisions were still common. They put an enormous CRT television by the road for their parents. A guy knocked on the door and asked if it was free and if it worked. The user said it was free, but they did not know if it worked anymore. The man took it and left. About an hour later, his truck came rip-assing back up. He furiously got out and threw the massive television in the yard. This was a 36-inch, 275-pound television. He screamed, "It does not fucking work." Then he climbed back in his truck and sped off. It was completely baffling. Up next, a guy looked at two $1 video games from a trilogy and actually asked, "So what am I supposed to do with these?" Even though they only had 2 games of a trilogy, a customer became incredibly difficult about the missing third installment. The customer asked the neighbor if they happened to have the third game, but the neighbor explained they never bothered with it. The customer then asked, "So what am I supposed to do with these 2? The neighbor reminded them that the games were only $1 each. The customer then pushed further, asking if they were sure they didn't have the other game inside their house. The neighbor, who wasn't even the one hosting the sale, replied that they never even bought that one. The customer then asked the neighbor if they could find it for them. When the neighbor said no, the customer claimed that the 2 games were now worthless. A user named Check Out Ma Wee Pit was baffled by the request. They wondered if the beggar imagined someone could just pull a whole game out of thin air. Another commenter, Santa, I know him, weighed in with a classic quote that fit the vibe perfectly. "No, Mom, you idiot. I have Bloodstorm and Bone Squad, and Bloodstorm 2, stupid. Which side are you on for this yard sale drama? Let me know in the comments." Up next, my untucked blue button-up apparently screamed, "Official stamp vendor," to the woman who cornered me at FedEx. Acknowledged her with a smile, because I always have my customer service persona. I told her, I do not work here. I assumed they do not sell them, but I told her they probably do at the Safeway a few blocks away, or the post office 2 blocks that way. She just said, "Oh, okay." It was simple, nothing wild. But FedEx employees wear very branded polo shirts and identification badges. This was far from my untucked blue button-up and khakis.